Hello everyone, my name is Brendan Snyder. Thank you so much for joining me and welcome to an ongoing series that's called If You Like, where I'm going to present in each episode a major band that we all know and love, in this case today, ACDC, and then I will present to you 5 bands that have the same character and energy as that major band. So like ACDC having hard rock riffs, flashy guitars, raw attitude, danger, and full of electricity. But before we get into all of these bands, if you're new to my channel and haven't already hit the subscribe button, please click the button. Also leave a comment, hit like, all of those things help support my channel. I would greatly appreciate it. And of course, as an added bonus, by subscribing, you'll be able to stay up to date on all that's going on in the world of music, just like this with If You Like ACDC, try these 5 bands. But let's talk a little bit about ACDC before we get started here. So of course they're an Australian rock band that formed in 1973. Now having been around for almost 50 years, still going strong, known for having 2 of the most iconic frontmen in all of rock, Bon Scott from 1974 to 1980 and Brian Johnson from 1980 until present, and then recording 2 of the most defining albums in all of rock music, Highway to Hell in 1979 featuring Bon Scott and Back in Black in 1980 featuring Brian Johnson. And their music itself is defined by the gravelly vocals of both singers, some of the most recognizable riffs in all of rock, lots of raw attitude, a sense of danger, and certainly full of energy. And so in my opinion, all of these bands I'm going to be talking about here exhibit that. And while there are so many great bands that certainly share in the spirit and exhibit that nature of ACDC, I did decide to spread out my selection over 2 different decades as well as different eras of rock music. But let's start with the obvious choice. So Rose Tattoo, right? A lot of people would think Rose Tattoo, another Australian band, they formed in 1976, feature Angry Anderson on vocals, but in my opinion, that would be too easy. So the first one I'm putting forward here, Buster Brown, Something to Say, 1974, formed in 1973, and that being the same year as ACDC. The band features Angry Anderson from Rose Tattoo on vocals. That was the connection there, why I started with the Rose Tattoo. But the other connection in here is that this band features Phil Rudd on drums, who would later go on to join ACDC. So this here is the debut and only album by the band. Unfortunately, they didn't last very long, and they disbanded in 1975. Now, moving from the 70s into the 80s, Starfighters, self-titled 1981 album. The band is from Birmingham, England, part of the new wave of British heavy metal movement. And while the band itself does sound that of ACDC, there is another connection in there. The band features current ACDC guitarist Stevie Young, who is nephew to Malcolm and Angus Young. That's how he got the gig. But the band itself recorded this album here. Then they did a follow-up album called In Flight Movie in 1983. Unfortunately, that album didn't do too much. Neither one really did, and the band folded thereafter. They have reformed a handful of time over the years, but their biggest claim to fame remains that Stevie Young is now the guitar player in ACDC. All right, continuing into the 90s, Rhino Bucket, their self-titled release, 1990, a great LA band that formed in 1988. This is their debut album here, the one I would tell you to start with, fronted by George D'Olivo. Apologize if I'm not saying that right on vocals. This band here sounded so much like ACDC back in the day. When they came on the radio, you almost couldn't tell the difference between them. And not just a clone band either. They managed to write some of the best sounding ACDC songs that ACDC, the band, never wrote. I don't know how that's possible, but they do it. They're still together this day. They've recorded 7 studio albums. Check them out. They're well worth it. Moving into the 2000s, we have Airborne, Running Wild, 2007, debut album from them. They're another Australian band formed in 2001 by brothers Joel and Ryan O'Keefe. And I don't know what it is about Australia and producing great rock bands, but Airborne is no exception to that rule. Amazing stuff. The band is still going today. They've made 5 albums. Another great band worth checking out. All right, and to wrap things up here, we do have to mention Buckcherry, of course, famous for the song Lit Up and Crazy Bitch, as well as a number of other tracks. One of the best bands to recall the spirit of ACDC without being a straight clone, but again, Buckcherry would be too easy. So instead, I'm going to tell you guys about Black Robot, self-titled 2009 album, debut studio album, and formed by 3 former members of Buckcherry. So they're the ones that played on the first 2 albums, Jonathan Brightman on bass, Devin Glenn on drums, and Yogi on guitar. So if you ever wonder what happened to those guys from the first 2 albums, this is it. Black Robot, they recruited vocalist Huck Johns, kept on rocking, delivering the goods, just like ACDC does. And there you go. 5 bands to try out if you like ACDC. And not just the same old bands that everyone seems to mention. Hopefully some new ones here that you may have overlooked that you can go back now and give a good listen to and explore. All right, in related videos, I'm going to leave a link in the description below to my album ranking of ACDC. You can check that out if you want. And certainly, if you've enjoyed this video, consider sharing it out on social media. Help spread the word that way. I would also greatly appreciate it. All right, everyone, take care. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you all real soon. Bye-bye.